Commander Jake Morrison stood near the large window of the observation deck and watched the stars. Behind him, the busy sounds of Galactic Trade Station Veritas filled the air. Alien species from dozens of worlds walked through the wide corridors, their strange languages mixing together into a constant hum of noise. Humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition only 6 months ago. In that short time, Jake had learned that humans were considered the youngest and weakest species in known space. Every other race had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans had only figured out faster than light travel 2 decades ago. Sergeant Katie Briggs walked up beside him. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes that never stopped scanning for threats. On her shoulder hung her M4 carbine, the same weapon she had carried through 3 tours on Earth before volunteering for the space program. "The Vectari delegation arrives in 10 minutes, she said. "Coalition Command wants us looking professional." Jake nodded. "Where's Danny?" "Corporal Price is checking the security stations. He wanted to make sure we knew all the exits." That was Danny, always thinking about what could go wrong. It was a good habit for a soldier. The observation deck slowly filled with representatives from various coalition species. The Cricks arrived first, their insect-like bodies clicking across the metal floor on 6 legs. Their large compound eyes reflected the starlight, and their mandibles moved constantly as they spoke to each other in their clicking language. Next came the Moldari, who looked like giant blobs of blue and green jelly. They moved by flowing across the floor, leaving a slightly wet trail behind them. 3 bulbous eyes on stalks rose from their bodies, looking in different directions at once. The Fenthians stood near the back of the room. They were tall and thin, almost like walking sticks with pale skin and large, dark eyes. They rarely spoke, preferring to observe everything with quiet patience. Then the main doors opened, and the Vectari entered. Jake had seen pictures of the Vectari, but seeing them in person was different. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with thick bodies covered in shimmering scales that changed color depending on their mood. Each Vectari had 4 muscular arms, and their faces featured flat noses and wide mouths filled with sharp teeth. They were the dominant military power in the coalition, and they knew it. High Marshal Vornak led the delegation. His scales were dark purple, a sign of high rank among his people. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. His yellow eyes scanned the room and stopped when they found the human delegation. "So," Vornak said, his voice deep and rough. A small device on his chest translated his words into English. "These are the new species, the ones who just learned to leave their own planet." Jake stepped forward and offered his hand in greeting. "Commander Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Liaison Unit. Welcome to Station Veritas, High Marshal." Vornak looked at the hand but did not take it. Instead, his eyes moved to the rifle on Katie's shoulder. "What is that device?" he asked. "Standard issue M4 carbine," Katie answered. "Earth military weapon." Vornak leaned closer, studying the rifle. Then he began to laugh. The sound was harsh and loud, and it echoed through the observation deck. Other aliens turned to look. Some of them began laughing too, though Jake was not sure they even knew why. "This is your weapon?" Vornak asked between laughs. "This metal tube?" "It fires 5.56mm rounds at high velocity," Katie said, keeping her voice calm. "Effective range of 500 meters." "It fires projectiles," one of the Cricks observers said, moving closer on its 6 legs. "Solid metal projectiles. I have read about such things. Very old technology, very primitive." "They use chemical propellants," another alien added. "Explosive powder. My species stopped using such weapons 8,000 years ago." The Moldari representative flowed toward Danny, who had just arrived at the observation deck. 3 eye stalks examined his rifle closely. "Surely this must be ceremonial," the Moldari said. "A cultural artifact. Something you carry to remember your past." "No," Danny said flatly. This is what we fight with." The laughter grew louder. Vornak shook his great head, his scales rippling with amusement. "Look at this," he said to the other delegates. "They throw little pieces of metal at their enemies, like children throwing stones." He tapped his own weapon, a sleek device that glowed with blue energy. "This is a plasma rifle. It fires superheated gas that can burn through 3 inches of solid steel. It has smart targeting that adjusts for distance and wind. It never needs to be reloaded." He pointed at Katie's M4. "And they bring toys to a gathering of warriors." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, he could see Katie's hands gripping her rifle a little harder. Danny's face had gone completely blank, which Jake knew meant he was very angry. But they had their orders. Observe. Represent humanity with dignity. Do not cause problems. "Our weapons have served us well," Jake said carefully. "They are reliable and effective." "Effective against what?" Vornak asked. "Other primitives on your little planet? You have never faced a real enemy. You have never fought in a real war." He stepped closer to Jake, using his height to look down at the human. "The Vectari have protected this region of space for 2,000 years. We have defeated enemies you cannot imagine. And we did it with weapons that make yours look like children's toys." He turned to address the whole room. "Let this be a lesson. When the humans need protection, when they face a real threat, they will come running to us, because those little metal tubes will not save them." The aliens laughed again. Some made gestures that Jake assumed were insults in their cultures. Katie leaned close to Jake. "Permission to show him how effective our weapons are, sir?" "Denied," Jake whispered back. "But save that anger. Someday we might need it." He did not know how soon that day would come. The meeting continued for another hour. Coalition business, trade agreements, defense treaties. The aliens mostly ignored the human delegation, treating them like children who had been allowed to sit at the adult table. When it was over, Jake gathered his team in their small section of the station. "They think we are weak," Danny said. "They think our weapons are jokes." "Let them think what they want," Jake replied. "We know what the M4 can do, and if they ever find out, they will not be laughing." Katie checked her rifle, making sure it was clean and ready. "I hope they find out soon." Jake looked out at the stars through a small window. Somewhere out there, beyond the safety of Coalition space, there were enemies, raiders, slavers, species that did not follow rules or treaties. And when those enemies came, Jake thought, the aliens would learn something important. They would learn that sometimes the oldest weapons were the most dangerous. They would learn that humans had been fighting and surviving for thousands of years before they ever reached the stars. They would learn to stop laughing. 3 months passed on Station Veritas. The humans kept to themselves, doing their jobs and trying to earn respect from species that still saw them as primitive newcomers. It was slow work, and most days it felt like they were making no progress at all. Lisa Warren worked in the medical wing as a nurse liaison. She was a small woman with gentle hands and a calm voice that helped patients feel safe. Today, she was treating a Fenthian who had trouble breathing in the station's air mixture. "Try to relax," she told the tall alien. "I am adjusting the oxygen levels now." The Fenthian's large dark eyes blinked slowly. "You are kind for a primitive species." Lisa smiled. She had learned to ignore such comments. "Thank you. Now breathe deeply." The first explosion shook the entire station. Lisa grabbed the edge of the medical bed to keep from falling. The lights flickered. Alarms began to scream. Through the window, she could see flashes of weapons fire in the distance. "All personnel, this is Station Command," a voice said over the speakers. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. All Coalition security forces report to defensive positions." The Fenthian tried to stand, but Lisa gently pushed the alien back down. "You are too weak to fight. Stay here where it is safe." More explosions, closer this time. Lisa could hear screaming in the corridors outside. She moved to the door and looked out carefully. What she saw made her blood run cold. Aliens she did not recognize were marching through the station. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and long arms that ended in clawed hands. They wore black armor and carried curved weapons that glowed with orange light. Their faces were hidden behind dark masks, but their movements spoke of violence and death. The Kathrani. Lisa had heard stories about them, raiders and slavers from outside Coalition space. They attacked ships and stations, taking whatever they wanted and killing anyone who resisted. But the stories said they never attacked major stations like Veritas. It was supposed to be too well defended. Lisa watched as a group of Vectari security guards tried to stop the Kathrani advance. The guards raised their plasma rifles and pulled the triggers. Nothing happened. The rifles made a weak humming sound and then went silent. The Vectari looked at their weapons in confusion. One of them tried again and again, but the rifle would not fire. The Kathrani did not have this problem. Their weapons worked perfectly. Orange beams of plasma cut through the Vectari guards like they were made of paper. Lisa pulled back from the door, her heart pounding. She understood now. The Kathrani had brought some kind of jamming technology, something that stopped energy weapons from working, and Coalition forces relied entirely on energy weapons. On the other side of the station, High Marshal Vornak screamed orders at his soldiers. His magnificent plasma rifle, the weapon he had been so proud of, was dead in his hands. "Fix it," he roared at a technician. "Make it work." "I cannot, Marshal. The jamming field is blocking all energy weapon frequencies. Nothing I try is working." Vornak threw the useless rifle against the wall. Around him, his elite guards were falling back. Without their weapons, they were just large targets for the Kathrani to shoot. "Retreat to the intersections," Vornak ordered. "Find something we can use." But there was nothing. Every weapon on the station used energy technology. Plasma, particle beams, graviton disruptors. All of them were useless now. In the human section of Station Veritas, Commander Jake Morrison gathered his team in their small barracks. 12 soldiers. That was all they had. 12 humans with their primitive weapons. "Status report," Jake said. Katie Briggs checked her M4, pulling back the charging handle to confirm a round was in the chamber. "Weapon is hot, sir. Ready to fire." Danny Price did the same. "Same here. Whatever they are using to jam the energy weapons is not affecting us." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The M4 did not use energy. It did not need electronics to fire. It was simple. A firing pin hit a primer, which ignited gunpowder, which pushed a bullet down the barrel at 3,000 feet per second. No computer, no battery, nothing to jam. "We have 12 rifles, 12 sidearms, and about 2,000 rounds of ammunition," said Corporal Ben Harper. He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice. "Plus fragmentation grenades and flashbangs." Private Amy Chen finished loading magazines at the table. She was the youngest member of the team, but she had proven herself in training time and again. "I counted 18 magazines per person. That should be enough." Jake turned on his radio. "Coalition Command, this is Human Team. Our weapons are unaffected by the jamming field. We are moving to engage the enemy." The response came quickly. "Negative, Human Team. Stand down immediately. Your primitive weapons will be ineffective against Kathrani armor. Remain in your section and await rescue." Katie looked at Jake. "Sir?" Jake thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Then he switched off the radio. "They think we cannot fight," he said. "They think our weapons are useless. But we know better. We have trained for this. We have prepared for this." He looked at each member of his team. "There are hundreds of innocent people on this station. Aliens who laughed at us. Aliens who called us primitive. But right now, we are the only ones who can fight." He picked up his rifle and checked the magazine. "So we are going to fight. We are going to show every species in this coalition what humans can do with simple metal and gunpowder." Danny attached his bayonet to the end of his rifle. About time. What is the plan? Ben asked. We move through the station in 2 fire teams, Jake said. Katie, you lead Alpha Team. Take Danny, Ben, and 3 others. I will lead Bravo Team with the rest. We clear each section, rescue any civilians we find, and eliminate every Kethrani we encounter. Amy finished with the magazines and stood up. Rules of engagement? Jake's eyes were cold. These are slavers. They came here to kill and kidnap innocent people. Shoot to kill. No warnings. No mercy. Lisa Warren was still hiding in the medical wing when she heard the strangest sound. It was loud and sharp, like a series of small explosions. It echoed through the corridors, unlike any weapon she had heard on the station before. Then came the screaming. But it was not human screaming. It was not the screams of coalition species. It was the Kethrani who were screaming now. Through the door, Lisa saw something she would never forget. A Kethrani raider stumbled backward into view. There were holes in his armor. Red blood poured from wounds in his chest. He fell and did not get up. Behind him came Private Amy Chen, her rifle raised, her eyes scanning for more targets. Medical wing clear, Amy said into her radio. She looked at Lisa. You okay? Lisa nodded, unable to speak. Amy gave her a small smile. Stay here. We are taking back the station. Then she was gone, moving down the corridor toward the sounds of battle. And for the first time since the attack began, Lisa felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt safe. The Kethrani had conquered dozens of stations and hundreds of ships. They had fought against every major species in the galaxy. They had defeated warriors who stood twice their height and soldiers with weapons that could melt steel. They had never heard anything like the sound that now filled the corridors of Station Veritas. It was thunder, constant rolling thunder that echoed off the metal walls and shook the floor beneath their feet. Each crack was followed by death. Each explosion meant another Kethrani soldier falling to the ground with holes in his body. Sergeant Katie Briggs pressed her back against a support pillar and leaned out just enough to aim. 3 Kethrani were running toward her position, their orange plasma rifles blazing. The beams scorched the wall next to her head, close enough that she could feel the heat. She fired 3 times. 3 bodies hit the floor. Contact down, she said into her radio. Moving to Sector 7. Behind her, Danny Price and Ben Harper were already advancing. They moved the way they had been trained on Earth, covering each other, never leaving a teammate exposed. Fire and movement, the oldest tactic in human warfare, and still the most effective. A Kethrani squad appeared at the end of the corridor. 6 soldiers in black armor, their masks hiding their faces. They saw the humans and raised their weapons. Danny threw a fragmentation grenade. It bounced once on the metal floor and rolled between the enemy soldiers. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. Shrapnel flew in every direction. 4 Kethrani went down immediately, their armor torn apart by the metal fragments. The other 2 stumbled, wounded and confused. Ben shot them both before they could recover. Grenade is very effective against groups, Danny said calmly. Save them for when we need them, Katie replied. We do not have many left. Across the station, Commander Jake Morrison was leading Bravo Team through the residential section. They had found 14 civilians hiding in their quarters, mostly Fenthians and Moldari, who could not fight back against the raiders. Stay behind us, Jake told them. Keep your heads down and do exactly what we say. A Moldari representative, the same one who had mocked their weapons 3 months ago, looked at Jake with all 3 of his eye stalks. Your weapons work. How do your weapons work? They do not need electricity, Jake said simply. Now be quiet. Amy Chen was on point, her rifle sweeping left and right as she checked each doorway. She was small and fast, hard to hit, and she never missed what she aimed at. A Kethrani stepped out from a side corridor directly in front of her. For a moment they both froze, surprised to see each other so close. Amy recovered first. She shot him twice in the chest and once in the head before he could raise his weapon. "Contact eliminated," she said, stepping over the body. "Path is clear." In the security center, High Marshal Vornak watched the battle on the few cameras that still worked. He could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were everywhere. They moved through the station like predators, appearing from nowhere and disappearing just as quickly. Their weapons made terrible sounds, and everywhere those sounds went, Kathrani died. "How many of them are there?" Vornak asked his aide. 12, Marshal. Only 12. Vornak stared at the screen. A human soldier, the woman called Katie, fired her weapon into a group of raiders. 3 fell. She moved to a new position and fired again. 2 more fell. She was not afraid. She was not hesitating. She was hunting. 12 soldiers with primitive weapons, Vornak said quietly, and they are winning. Commander Thek of the Kathrani was receiving reports from his teams, and each report was worse than the last. 20 soldiers dead in the first 5 minutes of contact with the humans. 30 more in the next 10 minutes. His raiders were trained fighters, veterans of many successful attacks, and they were dying in numbers he had never seen before. "What are we facing?" he demanded. "What weapons are they using?" "Projectile weapons, Commander," a soldier reported. "They fire solid metal at high speed. Our armor is not designed to stop such things." Thek knew about projectile weapons. Ancient history. Every species in the galaxy had used them thousands of years ago before discovering better technology. The Kathrani had assumed no one still used such things. They had assumed wrong. "Pull back from the human positions," Thek ordered. "Avoid them. Focus on the civilian sectors where we can grab hostages." It was a reasonable order, but it was too late. The humans were not staying in one place. They were moving through the station, clearing it section by section. There was no part of Veritas that was safe from them anymore. In the central plaza, the 2 human teams met up. They had cleared half the station and killed over 60 Kathrani between them. Not a single human had been seriously injured. "Status?" Jake asked. Katie reloaded her rifle with a fresh magazine. "Alpha team is good. Ammunition is getting low, but we can keep going." "Same for Bravo," said a soldier named Greg Walsh. "These guys cannot handle what we are throwing at them." Danny was looking at the station map on a wall display. "The Kathrani are pulling back to the cargo bay. They have hostages there, at least 30 civilians." Jake studied the map. The cargo bay was a large open space with lots of cover, perfect for a defensive position. The Kathrani would put their hostages in the center, where any rescue attempt might hit them by accident. "If they make it to their ships with those hostages, those people are gone forever," Jake said. "Coalition Command says to let them leave," Katie told him. "They say we should not risk the hostages." Jake shook his head. "Command's weapons do not work, ours do. We are not letting slavers take innocent people." He looked at his team. They were tired. They had been fighting for hours. Their ammunition was running low, and they had no backup coming. "This is going to be the hard part," he said. "They know we are coming. They will be ready for us, and there are still at least 60 of them left." Ben Harper slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. 60 to 12. Not great odds." "We have faced worse," Danny said. "When?" Amy asked. Danny thought about it. "Okay, maybe not worse, but we have faced bad odds before." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "We go in fast and hard, 2 entry points, suppressing fire on their positions while we move to flank. Watch your shots near the hostages, and remember what these things came here to do." "Remember what they are." Katie's eyes were cold and steady. "Slavers. Slavers," Jake repeated. "No mercy, no hesitation. We end this." They moved out toward the cargo bay. Behind them, they left a trail of spent bullet casings that clinked against the metal floor. Each one represented a shot fired. Each one represented a chance they had taken. By the end of this fight, there would be many more casings on the ground, and many more Kathrani who would never raid another station again. The door to the cargo bay loomed ahead. Beyond it, the final battle waited. Jake raised his hand and counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. The humans went to war. The cargo bay doors exploded inward. Ben Harper had placed the breaching charge perfectly, and the blast tore the heavy metal apart like paper. Before the smoke could clear, Katie Briggs was through the opening. Her rifle was already firing as she moved, dropping 2 Kathrani guards who had been standing too close to the door. She rolled behind a stack of cargo containers and kept shooting. "Contact right! 4 targets!" she called out. "Engaging!" Danny Price came through the second entry point on the opposite side of the bay. He and his team moved low and fast, using the shadows and cargo for cover. A Kathrani officer spotted them and raised his plasma rifle to fire. Danny shot him in the face before he could pull the trigger. The cargo bay erupted into chaos. Orange plasma beams crossed through the air in every direction as the Kathrani tried to find targets. The thunder of the human rifles answered them, each shot precise and deadly. Commander Thek stood in the center of the bay, surrounded by his remaining soldiers and the hostages they had captured. 37 civilians from different species, all bound and terrified, were his shield against the human attack. "Do not let them get close," Thek ordered. "Kill them all." But killing the humans was proving to be impossible. They never stayed in one place. They moved constantly, appearing from behind one container only to vanish and reappear somewhere else. And every time they appeared, more Kathrani died. Jake Morrison led the main assault down the center of the bay. He fired 3 rounds at a group of raiders trying to set up a defensive position, dropping 2 of them. The third ducked behind a crate, and Jake was already moving to a new angle. "Amy, suppressing fire on the left flank," he said into his radio. "Greg, take your team and circle around. We need to cut off their escape route to the ships." Amy Chen dropped to one knee and opened fire on the Kathrani positions. Her bullets sparked off metal containers and punched through thin armor. The raiders were forced to keep their heads down, unable to return accurate fire. This was what humans had been doing for thousands of years. Long before they reached the stars, they had been perfecting the art of war. Every tactic, every technique, every trick had been learned in blood and passed down through generations. The aliens in the coalition had advanced technology, but humans had something just as valuable. They had experience. A Kathrani soldier charged toward Katie with some kind of blade in his hand. His armor was scorched from a near miss, and rage filled his hidden eyes. He was done trying to fight at range. He would kill this human with his own claws. Katie sidestepped his attack easily. She grabbed his arm, twisted it until she heard something crack, and drove her combat knife into the weak point at his neck. He fell at her feet, dead before he hit the ground. "Hand-to-hand is also effective," she said to Danny as he ran past. "Show off," Danny replied. The hostages were screaming now. They could not understand what was happening. Their coalition protectors had been helpless against the Kathrani. Their advanced technology had failed, and now these primitive humans, the ones they had laughed at, were tearing through the raiders like they were nothing. A young Fenthian watched with wide eyes as Ben Harper took out 3 Kathrani soldiers with 3 shots. Each bullet found its mark with perfect accuracy. The Fenthian had been told that humans were the weakest species in the coalition. He had been told their weapons were toys. He would never believe such things again. Commander Thek was starting to panic. He had begun this attack with over 200 soldiers. Now he had maybe 40 left, and they were being pushed back toward the docking bay doors. If they could reach their ships, they could escape. They could leave this cursed station and never return. "Fall back," he ordered. "Protect the hostages. They are our shield." But the humans had already thought of that. Greg Walsh and his team had circled around and were now blocking the path to the ships. The Kathrani were surrounded. Jake Morrison stepped out from behind cover. He walked toward the center of the bay with his rifle raised, and somehow no one shot him. Maybe the Kathrani were too shocked. Maybe they were too afraid. "Release the hostages," Jake called out. "Do it now, and I will let your surviving soldiers live. Refuse, and we will kill every last one of you." Thek laughed, though the sound was hollow. "You are only 12. We are still 40. You cannot defeat us all." "Look around," Jake said. "Look at how many of your soldiers we have already killed. Look at how many of you are left, and ask yourself, do you really want to test us?" The cargo bay was silent for a long moment. Bodies littered the floor, almost all of them Kathrani. Spent bullet casings covered the ground like a metal carpet. The air smelled of gunpowder and blood. Thek made his decision. He grabbed one of the hostages, a small Moldari, and put his plasma rifle to its head. "One more step, human, and I kill this one, then the next, then the next. Can you kill us faster than we can kill them?" Jake did not lower his rifle. "Katie!" A single shot rang out. Thek's hand exploded in a spray of blood and bone. His rifle clattered to the floor. He screamed and stumbled backward. Katie lowered her rifle from where she had been aiming. The shot had traveled over 50 meters between two hostages and hit Thek's hand with perfect precision. "Yes," she said calmly. "We can." The remaining Kathrani dropped their weapons. There was no fight left in them. They had seen too much. They had lost too many. These humans with their primitive weapons were more deadly than anything they had ever faced. Jake walked through the surrendering raiders until he stood directly in front of Commander Thek. The Kathrani commander was on his knees, clutching his ruined hand, staring up at the human with something like disbelief. "You came here to take slaves," Jake said. "You came here to kill innocent people. You thought we were weak because we do not have fancy weapons." He raised his rifle and pointed it at Thek's head. "We have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We have killed each other with rocks, with swords, with bullets, and with bombs. We have nearly destroyed our own planet with our weapons, and you thought we were weak." A single shot echoed through the cargo bay. Thek fell. Jake turned to his team. "Secure the hostages, tend to the wounded, and someone find a working radio to tell Coalition Command that the station is clear." The battle was over. 12 humans with their primitive weapons had defeated an army of raiders. They had rescued every hostage. They had done what the entire Coalition security force could not do. And when the other species looked at them now, there was no laughter in their eyes. There was only fear and respect. The news of what happened on Station Veritas spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Every species in the Coalition heard the story. 12 humans with primitive weapons had defeated over 200 Kathrani raiders. They had done it when every other weapon on the station had failed. They had done it without losing a single soldier. At first, many did not believe it. The Kathrani were feared throughout known space. They had terrorized dozens of systems and defeated opponents with far more advanced technology. The idea that a handful of humans with metal tubes could stop them seemed impossible. Then the recordings from the station cameras were released. Species across the Coalition watched in stunned silence as the humans moved through Station Veritas. They saw Katie Briggs fire her rifle again and again, each shot dropping an enemy. They saw Danny Price throw his grenade into a group of raiders and watched the explosion tear through Kathrani armor. They saw Commander Jake Morrison lead the final assault on the cargo bay, walking into enemy fire like he was invincible, and they heard the sound, that terrible constant thunder that accompanied every human attack, the sound of gunpowder and metal, the sound of death. High Marshal Vornak requested a private meeting with Commander Morrison 1 week after the attack. The Vectari arrived alone, without guards or aides, and found Jake standing in the observation deck where they had first met. "Commander," Vornak said. His translator rendered his voice in English, but Jake could hear something different in his tone, something that had not been there before. "Marshal," Jake replied. Vornak walked to the window and stared out at the stars. His scales shifted to a pale blue color that Jake had learned meant respect among the Vectari. "I owe you an apology," Vornak said. "I owe your entire species an apology. I called your weapons toys. I called your people primitive. I was wrong." Jake said nothing. He waited. "I have fought for 80 cycles," Vornak continued. "I have led armies against enemies that would terrify most species, and I have never seen anything like what you and your soldiers did." He turned to face Jake. "How did you do it? How did 12 soldiers defeat an army?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "The M4 is not a complicated weapon. It does not have smart targeting or energy cells. It just throws pieces of metal very fast. But we have been using weapons like this for a long time. We have had a lot of practice." "Practice," Vornak repeated. "Is that what you call thousands of years of warfare?" "We call it history," Jake said. "Every generation of humans has fought. Against enemies, against each other. We have never stopped developing new ways to win fights. And when you strip away all the fancy technology, fighting is what we do best." Vornak was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Jake had never seen a Vectari do to any other species. He bowed his great head in respect. "The Coalition was wrong to underestimate your kind," he said. "I was wrong. I hope we can start again." Jake extended his hand. This time, Vornak took it. In the months that followed, everything changed for humanity in the Coalition. Human military advisors became the most requested specialists in the galaxy. Species that had mocked their weapons now wanted to learn how to use them. The M4 platform was studied and adapted for alien hands, creating new versions that could be used by soldiers of all shapes and sizes. Katie Briggs was promoted to Major and assigned to train Vectari Special Forces. The proud warriors who had once laughed at her rifle now listened carefully to every word she said. She taught them human combat tactics, and they learned that sometimes the simplest approach was the most effective. Danny Price received the Coalition Medal of Valor, the highest honor that could be given to any soldier. He became the first human to receive it, but everyone knew he would not be the last. At the ceremony, a Krix general told him that his grenades had given the Krix new ideas about defensive strategies. Lisa Warren was recognized as a Coalition-protected healer, a title that meant she could move freely through any war zone to tend to the wounded. The aliens she had helped in the medical wing spoke publicly about how she had protected them, standing between them and the Kethrani with nothing but her courage. Amy Chen became something of a legend among younger soldiers of all species. The story of how she had cleared the medical wing single-handedly was told and retold, growing with each telling. She found it embarrassing, but she also understood that humanity needed heroes that other species could see and admire. Commander Jake Morrison was offered a position on the Coalition Security Council. He would be the first human to serve on the body that made military decisions for the entire galaxy. When asked if he would accept, he said he needed time to think. What he was really doing was making sure his team was taken care of first. 1 year after the Kethrani incident, a celebration was held on Station Veritas. Representatives from every Coalition species gathered in the observation deck to honor the humans who had saved them. Jake stood with his team, wearing dress uniforms that felt strange after so long in combat gear. Beside him, Katie looked uncomfortable with all the attention. Danny kept reaching for a rifle that was not there. Ben and Amy and the others shifted from foot to foot, clearly wishing they were somewhere else. But when the music played and the speeches were given, even the humans had to admit it felt good to be respected. A young Krix officer approached Ben Harper during the celebration. The insectoid was clearly nervous, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Sergeant Harper," the Krix said, "I have heard the stories about the battle. Is it true that you can tell how close death came by counting the empty casings on the ground?" Ben smiled and patted the ceremonial rifle at his side. Every empty casing is a chance we took. Every bullet we fired was a moment when things could have gone wrong. By the end of that fight, we were walking on brass. The Cricks made a gesture of admiration. Your weapons speak the language of war, loud and honest. They do not hide what they are. No, Ben agreed. They do not. Later that night, Jake found himself alone on the observation deck. The celebration had ended, and most of the guests had returned to their ships or quarters. Only the stars remained, cold and distant and eternal. Katie walked up beside him. Thinking deep thoughts, Commander? Just remembering, Jake said. A year ago, we stood in this exact spot and listened to them laugh at us. They said we were primitive. They said our weapons were toys. They said we would come running to them when real danger appeared. And now, Jake smiled, now they build statues of us. Now they study our tactics in their military academies. Now they ask us to train their best soldiers. Katie leaned against the railing. Do you think they will ever truly accept us? Or will they always be a little afraid? Both, Jake said. And that is fine. Fear and respect often walk together. As long as they do not forget what we can do, we will be safe. From across the galaxy, a transmission arrived at Station Veritas. The message was simple, and it spread to every corner of Coalition space within hours. It was a warning from the Kathrani remnant. They swore revenge on the humans who had destroyed their raiding party. They promised to return with a fleet 10 times the size. They promised that the humans would pay for what they had done. Jake read the message and laughed. Let them come, he said. We have plenty of ammunition. And from that day forward, no alien in the Galactic Coalition ever laughed at a human holding an M4, because they knew the truth now. They knew that humanity had been forged in the fire of 10,000 years of warfare. They knew that the simple weapons humans carried were extensions of a species that had never stopped fighting, never stopped surviving, never stopped finding new ways to win. They knew that when the thunder came,